Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. The media is basically partially to blame for why we still don't have UFO disclosure, full UFO disclosure. I mean, when you think about what's happened here now, it's been 5 years since that New York Times article and the release of those videos that were leaked, the gimbal video, the Go Fast. Those videos were leaked 5 years ago now, and yes, there have been reports on different mainstream news outlets like Fox News and NBC and CNN and ABC and CBS. There's been little snippets here and there, like for example, on a lot of times you'll see something on the last 20 minutes of the Tucker Carlson show or something. It's never, most of the time these things aren't front and center. You'll notice every now and then you'll see still the 60 Minutes might make a big deal out of it or something like that, and basically the focus is on the things that the Pentagon has been experiencing, the objects that people, Navy pilots and Air Force pilots have seen and witnessed, and there's no explanation for them. And then, but outside of that, that's it. There's really no discussion beyond that. Everything has been focused on what's coming out of the Pentagon. And if we still await that report that was due October 31st, right? It is now November 14th, and we still don't have that. So as we await that, I'm just wondering, thinking about here on how the mainstream media has really let us down. Basically, there's either two things going on here. They're either it's a deliberate thing. They're doing so. Somebody at the top has instructed, hey, we're not going to go any deeper than talk to some of these pilots maybe on a 60 Minutes show, or maybe have Gary Nolan on Tucker Carlson, or they're not going to go any deeper than that. They'll just go for some of that speculation, but there's no real discussion about some of the other things that associate it with UFOs, things that have been talked about over the decades, like all these different people have come forward, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. People have stepped forward and said, hey, I was abducted by aliens, right? How come there's been no focus on that? There's been no effort by anyone in the mainstream media to try to uncover more, to try to take this deeper than they've gone so far. They're just letting it. They're basically just going so far as to look at what the Pentagon has provided, and they don't look any deeper than that. It's almost like they're sitting back and waiting for the Pentagon to give them more information. There's no effort on the mainstream media, which has all the resources in the world, to try to dig deeper, to try to pry some of this information out of these people within the Pentagon. And the people within the Pentagon, basically, when I say that, I'm talking about the Majestic 12 group that nobody says, nobody in the mainstream media talks about. There's most certainly a group within the Pentagon that controls all information about the extraterrestrial presence here. But the mainstream media has done a terrible job. And either they're stupid and they're just dense, right? Or it's being done on purpose. They're being instructed by people at the top of these media empires to not look into this, because those people might be working along with these people in the Pentagon. I don't know. I tend to believe it's probably they're just dense and stupid, and they just don't want to look into it for whatever reason. They rather just keep we just had this big election, right? Okay, it's all over with now. Let's move on now. Let's talk about the biggest story of all time. Why not? That's what it is. I mean, let's talk about that. Why not? Let's forget it. But the election's over. We could talk about other things now. And actually, this is the biggest story of all time. Now as an example of how the media has really dropped the ball on this, just consider those leaked videos from 2017, the gimbal video, for instance. The gimbal video, I mean, for the past 5 years, we've been listening to debunkers try to argue about the rotation of the object, and that really the rotation, what they're trying to say, like people like Mick West, is the rotation of the object is basically that's something that's caused by the camera itself, by the camera that was used to film it. It's really not rotating the way you think it's rotating. Okay, and then you have other people saying, no, that's not the case, that the object is rotating. But whatever the case, the big picture is being missed here in all this nonsense, right? The big picture is it's a flying saucer. I mean, anybody look at that object, right? It's clear. It's a flying saucer. And not only that, you can hear the pilot saying at some point during this, hey, there's a whole fleet of them. So it was more than just one of those flying saucers. It was a whole fleet of them. So it's like, how come we're not talking about that a little bit more? How come we're all worried about the rotation? Right? How come the focus has been on that? That's a ridiculous thing to focus on when you really think about it. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, the fact is, this is a flying saucer, and just like all these other flying saucers that have been reported over the past 75 years that since 1947 that people have been seeing. There's been flying saucers, and here we have a image from a military jet filming an actual flying saucer. That's what it is. There's no visible means of propulsion on that thing. It's shaped like a flying saucer. Who cares about the rotation? What does that matter? Right? It doesn't matter. The bottom line is one way or the other, right? No matter which way you look at it, right? It's a flying saucer. It's shaped like a saucer. It's not a jet. It's not another jet. You can hear the voice of the pilot saying, "Oh, there's a whole fleet of them. You believe what you're seeing here?" So, with that in mind, like the next logical step, you would think, right? You would have thought anybody would have thought, people who have been waiting to find out, waiting to be told the absolute truth after waiting for all these years, for the government to finally disclose the truth, what it knows. You would think that somebody in the mainstream press would like, okay, let's maybe, okay, it looks like these people who said they were abducted over the years, I guess there must be something to that after all. You think that maybe some of them would have thought of that, or you would think that maybe some of them would have put two and two together and realized, yeah, I guess there was a lot of UFOs seen, over these pastures where these cattle were mutilated. I guess maybe there is something to that after all. Like, there's no investigation. You don't see any of the mainstream media ever really put its resources into trying to uncover anything deeper. The only thing that you really see, right, it's the reverse. Like for the past months and months now, you have the New York Post, Stephen Greenstreet, basically keeps beating his dead horse about Skinwalker Ranch, that the government spent money investigating UFOs and other strange phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch, and they're looking for, and he's all upset because they're looking for werewolves. Okay, all right, you exposed that. Okay, everyone's all, the government spent money on Skinwalker Ranch and they're looking for werewolves. I mean, for one thing, we don't know. Maybe the werewolves were part of this phenomena. Who knows? Maybe there is really werewolves there. Maybe the aliens make people think they're seeing werewolves there. Who knows? But that's a different story for a different time. Okay, you busted that story wide open, okay, and you want everyone in the world to be all upset about it. Oh, the government spending this money on Skinwalker Ranch. Who gives a shit? I don't really care. How about you do something else now? How about looking into you have the resources, at the New York Post is a bigger publication with pretty deep pockets, unlike some of these local newspapers, right? How about you use those resources to try to come up with more, try to break the biggest story of all time. Instead, you want to he's beating a dead horse like every other week. I'm reading another tweet from this guy talking about Skinwalker Ranch. Like, okay, so what? The government spent money there. I don't care. Who cares? It's like he wants everyone to get up in arms, like and grab torches and pitchforks and I don't know, what does he want? What do you want with people to do? Okay, it's over with now. You're just beating a dead horse. But yeah, it's just things like that are driving me crazy, because it's like, here we have, okay, like here, we're gonna show you a little bit. We're gonna open up Pandora's box here for a little bit for you, right? The media sees that, a lot of them, still have, look at the stuff with the little smirk on their face, because they really don't know how to react, right? What they should have been doing is they should have been taking it to the next step. The next step is, okay, this thing looks like a flying saucer to me. Obviously, it's a flying saucer. The government doesn't know what it is, right? So it must be a flying saucer, just like a lot of people have been telling us over all these decades. Flying saucers, and of course, associated with flying saucers are these beings that are definitely not human looking, right? And they're basically aliens, and they basically abduct people. So how come they're not looking into that? How come that has not become part of the story in the mainstream media? It has not, because it hasn't. Instead, we sit around waiting for a report. It seems like just yesterday we had a report, but was back in May, where they had this when you had some Pentagon officials meeting with the House Intelligence Committee talking about UFOs, basically downplaying for the most part, and the whole thing was a waste of time. And now we hear there's supposed to be this another report coming forth, like we had last year, and basically it's going to be 366 objects, and half of them are explained, and the other half, we don't know. And then we just sit back and wait. And we wait for what? Let's start looking into this a little bit deeper. The mainstream media is just going to sit back and wait for the Pentagon to tell them, to let them know what's going on. Like, why not look into this a little bit more? I mean, there's been a cover-up for decades now. I mean, it's been documented in numerous books, like I talk about all the time, UFOs and the National Security State, volumes 1 and 2 by Richard Dolan. Look at those books, you'll see. But instead, we're just given this... We're just given this song and dance. The mainstream media just doesn't seem to care. Instead, it's independent researchers still, after all this time, that are basically driving this. If it wasn't for independent researchers, nobody would know anything. But yeah, I just don't understand it. Like, basically, the mainstream media is complicit. They're complicit in this cover-up, whether it's through their own fault, because they're just too dense, right? They just don't understand that this is the biggest story of all time. It's bigger than all this political nonsense that we've been going through. It's way bigger than that, right? I mean, this is the biggest story since the creation of the world. It's an incredible story, and it's hard to believe that they just can't see the importance of it. They're just not understanding what's going on here. And I just wish that needs to change. I mean, if we were going to move forward, that needs to change. But it just seems what's going on here. It just seems that there's powers in control here. It's that don't want the world to know the truth for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it's beyond. Sometimes I wonder. Maybe it's in addition to the panic and all that kind of thing. Maybe there's other reasons too, financial reasons. I just don't get it. I don't understand why we're not moving forward on this. And I don't understand the mainstream media, why they're complicit with this. I don't understand it. I mean, this would be the juiciest story ever. It should be. This should be the top of the news hour, right? That's what this should be. It's not. For the most part, it has not been. Okay, right. Maybe when those videos were first leaked, it might have been, for a little bit here and there, right? But for the most part, it's not. For the most part, it has not been. It's usually these news shows in the evenings on all these different networks, right? It's usually something that they'll talk about in the last 15 minutes, in the final segment where most people ain't really watching at that point, things like that. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, but again, people like this Stephen Greenstreet, what's he doing? Why you're still looking into this? Who cares? It's like that line from Jaws. I mean, you yell Barracuda, everyone says, huh? What? You say shark, and we've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July. That's the difference here. I mean, who cares about that the government spent money investigating potential werewolves at Skinwalker Ranch? It was more than that, even though you like to focus on that werewolf part. But there's more to this than that. There's more to UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrial visitation than Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, you have the resources there. You should be using those resources to try to... this is the biggest story ever, dude. What are you doing? And all these other mainstream outlets, ABC, CBS, CNN, NBC, Fox, they all have this. They all have the resources, but obviously they're not interested. They're not interested in the extraterrestrial reality. They have no interest in that. And again, there's been proof sitting right in front of our faces for the past 5 years. Again, that gimbal object, it's a flying saucer. The same things that a lot of people have been telling people for years. Hey, I saw a flying saucer. I saw alien beings. I saw these little things. The little people. They weren't humans. That's because they're not humans. There's extraterrestrials here. There are extraterrestrials here. All these people have been telling the truth, but we're not being told. We're not being given that information, and the mainstream press, mainstream media is not helping us. They are complicit. I mean, the mainstream media needs to be. We might have had disclosure already. Starting 5 years ago, once that stuff came out, once the tide started to turn there, had there been some smart people in the mainstream media who tried to who would push this deeper than some of these other outlets. If they would have pushed this, we might have had disclosure already. That's the problem. They're not pushing the Pentagon. They're not pushing back against the Pentagon and the nonsense and a lot of the see-through bogus explanations that they try to provide every now and then. And the other thing, the New York Times running that article recently, right before Halloween. What does that tell you? What does that show you? It's almost like that seems like almost like they're working hand in hand with the Pentagon to try to pass off some kind of a lie, some sort of a phony story, a phony narrative to the public. So so maybe the New York Times might be in the Pentagon's back pocket. I'm not sure, but it sure seems like that way. But there's some other ones out there that it's time to think about what's going on here, right? We're sitting on this for 5 years. We're playing patty cakes for 5 years now. Nobody's really doing anything. The mainstream media needs to get up off its duff and do something. Do some investigation. You could blow the lid off this. It would be bigger than Watergate, guaranteed.